Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody today?
Just
Good. How
right.
are you?
I am dandy. Thank you for asking. I'll tell you what's really funny is at 7:24, there was one person in the waiting room. Usually there's like 20. I'm sitting here going, oh no, did I do something wrong? Am I on the right?
It's rainy Friday and everybody's tired.
And Friday the 13th.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it is.
Wendy, are you feeling better?
I am. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for
We,
asking. I,
we missed you Monday at Key City.
I missed it too. And I'll tell you what really kills me is when I start getting the messages of follow up, like when we're in counseling and people are giving out referrals and things like, and I just see the referrals come by. I don't know. Well, why? What did we
We
cover?
need to
What
have
did I
some
miss?
type of some type of a Zoom or audio or something. So if you can't be there, you can at
You
least
know
listen.
what? I should have asked for that. I didn't even think about that.
It
We
was good.
should do that for members that aren't able to make it. If you're able to get on Zoom, even if you're able to pop in for a short period of time, whatever the
Right.
reason is that you're not there, that's a good idea. Maybe we should tell Sue. What do you think, Sue?
I'm fine with it. Jeff doesn't like he doesn't like Zoom. He's the one that usually protests, but
Yeah,
we can talk about it.
yeah. He doesn't like it on the receiving end. Like, doesn't feel like it's as connected, but
Right.
it's better than zero.
Yep.
That's
Kind
the
of
way
like church, you can watch church online, but it's not the same being
it
there. But you still
sure
have that
isn't.
option.
It sure isn't. You're exactly right. But the other thing it does too is it really makes you not want to miss the next one because that FOMO shows up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a great group.
It
Always
truly
something new.
It truly is. Hey, I don't know if y'all can see this, but look at these flowers.
Mm,
I know Sue will appreciate them.
All
This
Beautiful.
is
right. Happy
my
Father's Day.
office. We planted hydrangeas
Strangers.
outside our office building about 3 years ago, and they are absolutely gorgeous now.
Mm-mm.
It's just crazy. And what I really love about them is when they die, they still look good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hydrangeas, they last forever.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
You don't have any deer around there? Deer? They don't
Not
eat those?
not in downtown Rock Hill. We have animals, but they're not deer.
Okay.
Lots of crazy things, but not deer. I wish we did. That's for sure. Did y'all get a downpour last night?
Absolutely. I don't know about it. Dot told me it was thunder and lightning and all of the other parts of the storm, but I was dead to it.
It was all night long. Like it seemed like it was all night long. It was when until I fell asleep, but uh we've got plumbing issues in our building. We have gutters. This is a historic building, and all of our gutters off of our slate roof drains into these gutters that actually go inside the attic of the building. Old churches are like that too. So the the pipes that are inside the building that are the gutters are cast iron and they're 125, 30 years old, so you
Mm.
know what that turns into is rust. So it's all flooding into our office. I came in this morning to two huge puddles of water all over
Wow.
the floor. We have to have the whole thing replumbed, and of course there'll be a special price for us since it's historic too.
Oh my goodness.
I know it never stops, does it?
Yeah. Mhm.
You pay for the beauty, that's for sure. That is for sure. Hey, if y'all will go to Facebook and follow it or like it or subscribe to all those special things we do, that would be really, really helpful. Good morning. You are at Sonrisers. I'm so glad to have you here today. I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today. We um, covered it a little bit a couple weeks ago about issues with titles and really and bad actor title companies. This is going to be good. Amanda Sutherlin is going to be here, and I'm really excited to see what she's got for us. So we're glad to have you here today. And Tom, are you ready to get us started, my friend?
Hey, I am. Good morning, guys. I always try to, with the devotional, try to follow a theme of where we are. A couple of weeks ago it was, Mother's Day, and we talked about Mother's Day, and this coming Sunday is Father's Day, and uh, I took my wife Dot out to Mother's Day uh, in Fort Mill. What was the name of the place? Chop.
Epic Chop.
Epic Chop House. Nice place, great place. Had to have reservations. If you didn't have reservations, you couldn't get in. And so I asked her to call to see what we needed to do for Father's Day, and the person told her just walk in. There's nothing special. There's no any type of dinner arrangements for Father's Day. And a few years ago, I would call restaurants and said, "Hey, I want to book for Father's Day." They said, "Sir, there's no problem. Whenever you want to come, just bring your party and we can seat you." So there is definitely a difference in our society, concerning Father's Day. And I'm probably going to date myself, but I was doing some research. There was a show that started in America. This was in 1954. It says Fathers Knows Best by Robert Young, and it ran for 6 seasons from 1954 to 1960. And many of you may have remembered Married with Children, which started in 1987 and ran for 11 seasons. Well, that was not kind of the typical model that you would have wanted to have for your dad was Al Bundy. But it just shows our society and where we are and what we think about the Father. And I would not only say our society, but even Satan himself on what we do and try to diminish the role that a father has. I want to give you data this morning, and the data is not something that I consider to be biased or prejudiced or whatever. It's just data, and I've done this before, and I don't have the year when the data happened. But I want to give you some data about fathers in the United States. In the United States, there are more than 64 million men who identify themselves as being a father. Out of that figure, only 26.5 million men are part of a home where they are married to a spouse and have the children under the age of 18 living there. The U.S. Census Bureau reports that 22% of fathers are raising 3+ children under the age of 18, with all of them being their biological relatives. Only 2% of fathers raising children are living in the home of a relative or unrelated individual. There are 2.5 million fathers who are on their own in a single parent household. In 1970, there were only 400,000 fathers in that situation. 18% of the single parent households recognized by the U.S. Census Bureau are headed by a single father. Fathers are important. Unfortunately, fathers are not always there. These statistics on fatherless homes show why it is important, even as a single parent, for a father to stick around. Statistics about a fatherless home. 85% of youth who are currently in prison grew up in a fatherless home. This is from Texas Department of Correction. 7 out of every 10 youth that are housed in a state-operated correctional facility, including detention and residential treatment, come from a fatherless home. U.S. Department of Justice. 39% of students in the United States from the first grade to their senior year in high school do not have a father at home. Children without a father are 4 times more likely to be living in poverty than children with a father. 75% of rapists are motivated by displaced anger that is associated with feelings of abandonment that involves their father. Living in a fatherless home is a contributing factor to substance abuse, with children from such homes accounting for 75% of adolescent patients being treated in substance abuse. 85% of all children which exhibit some type of behavioral disorder comes from a fatherless home. 90% of the youth in the United States who decide to run away from home or become homeless for any reason originally comes from a fatherless home. 63% of youth suicide involves a child who was living in a fatherless home when they made their final decision. Children who live in a single parent or step family home report less schoolwork monitoring, less social supervision, lower educational expectation than children who come from a 2-parent home. Even when poverty levels are equal, children who come from a 2-parent home outperform children who come from a 1-parent home. Within the African American Black community, about 2.5 million fathers live with their children, while 1.7 million fathers are not living with them. In 2014 study, only 3% of single mothers fell into the strongest demographic groups, while 44% fell into the weakest demographic group. 92% of the parents who are, listen to this, 92% of the parents who are currently in prison in the United States are fathers. Pregnant women who do not have the support of the father experience pregnancy loss at a 48% rate. When the father is present, the prevalence of pregnancy loss falls to 22%. For single dads, 39% of households had a family income which was $50,000 or more. 44% of single dads were divorced, while only 33% had never married. 43% of fathers who do not see their role as something that is important to their personal identity. 54% of fathers in the U.S. say that parenting isn't enjoyable all the time. Even in homes with father, the modern dad spends only 8 hours per week on childcare, which is 6 hours less than the modern mom. On the other hand, 43% of the modern dads' time is spent with paid work compared to 25% of the time for the modern mom. Dads are spending 3 times more time with their kids than dads did in 1965. Only 5% of the households in the United States say that the ideal situation is to have the mother work and the father stay home to take care of the children. 53% of Americans say that mothers do a better job at parenting than fathers. Only 1% of Americans say that fathers are able to do a better job at parenting than moms. 70% of adults say it's equally important for a newborn to spend time bonding with their father and their mother. Life changes. As adults, Fatherless children are more likely to experience unemployment, have low income, remain on social assistance, and experience homelessness. Future relationships. Father absent children tend to enter partnerships earlier, are more likely to divorce or dissolve their cohabitating union, and are more likely to have children outside marriage, outside any partnership. Mortality. Fatherless children are more likely to die as children and live in an average of 4 years less over the lifespan. Truancy and poor academics performance. 71% of high school dropouts are fatherless. Fatherless children have more trouble academically, scoring poorly on tests of reading, mathematics, and thinking. Children from father-absent homes are more likely to play truant from school, more likely to be excluded from school, more likely to leave school at age 16, and less likely to attain academic and professional qualifications. Delinquency and youth crime include violent crimes. 85% of youth in prison have an absent father. Fatherless children are more likely to offend and go to jail as adults. Promiscuity and teen pregnancy. Fatherless children are more likely to experience problems with sexual health, including a greater likelihood of having intercourse before the age of 16, foregoing contraceptions during their first intercourse, becoming teenage parents, and contracting sexually transmitted infections. Girls manifest an object hunger for males and experience the emotional loss of their fathers as a rejection of them becomes susceptible to exploitation by adult men. Drug and alcohol use. Fatherless children are more likely to smoke, drink, and abuse drugs in childhood and adulthood. Homelessness. 90% of runaways children have an absent father. Exploitation and abuse. Fatherless children are at a greater risk of suffering physical, emotional, sexually abused, being 5 times more likely to have experienced physical abuse and emotional maltreatment with a 100 times higher risk of fatal abuse. A recent study reported that preschoolers not living with both of their biological parents are 40 times more likely to be sexually abused. Physical health problems. Fatherless children report significantly more psychosomatic health symptoms and illness such as acute and chronic pain, asthma, headaches, and stomach aches. Mental health disorder. Father absent children are consistently overrepresented on a wide range of mental health, particularly anxiety, depression, and suicide. I wanted to, before we did the spiritual part, the devotion itself, I just wanted to, give these figures, and maybe many of us may not have experienced that, or not growing up in a fatherless home. But when you start seeing these kids being arrested, and you see these kids that are in prison, and we sometimes don't go back and think about what has occurred with that family dynamic for this to happen, and many times we just don't have answers. But you can see that there's reasons for our society and what's going on, because dad is not at home. And so maybe on this call, we have all good dads, who take care of their kids and take care of and love the kid's mother, and all of that. And that's great. I'm glad, would be glad and happy to know that. But I would also say, as we go through this lesson, it gives us the opportunity to pray for these homes where the children there don't have, the dad is not there. They don't have that father figure, and have the two-parent home, and so there is something for us to do, because one of the things about all of this is we live in the same society. We all live in the same village, so we cannot prosper a village if there's suffering and different changes and stats going on in the houses and the communities around us. This is a lesson I was going to do this morning. The scripture text is a father's legacy. Proverbs 27. The scripture said, the righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. The other scripture is Ephesians 6:4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and the instructions of the Lord. We want to recognize, and I want to recognize a fatherhood. You know, whether or not today, whether you're a father, a grandfather, a mentor, or a spiritual father in your faith, your influence that we have is powerful and it's enduring. Fatherhood is just not about a biological reality, it's a spiritual calling. Proverbs 27, as I said, a father leads with integrity. The righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Integrity means being the same person in private as you are in public. And you know, that's one that as I grew up with my kids is, you know, are we people who are kind of, you know, two-faced, you know, around the public and other people, we're one person, but when we at home, we're someone else. You know, we wear different masks, and kids pick up on that. But the scriptures say lead with integrity means that you're the same person at home as you are someplace else. The kids, they learn more from what we do than what we say. A father's walk of integrity lays down a legacy of trust, faith, and moral strength. For men, our character is our testimony. We should be honest and faithful. We should be consistent. That is how our children are blessed after we are gone. They see us, they imitate us, they follow us. A father teaches with patience. Do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up. But bring them up in the discipline and instructions of the Lord. Here God tells us as dads how to bring our kids up. It didn't say if it's math and science, even though those are important, but it says bring them up in the discipline and instructions of the Lord. God calls fathers to discipline, not with hardness, but with love and guidance. Children need correction, but they also need to know they are safe and loved. Discipline without love leads to rebellion. Love without discipline leads to chaos. We should take time to teach, not just facts, but values. Open the Bible with your children. Pray with them. Model how to follow Christ daily. A father reflects God the Father. Matthew 7:11. If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things? An earthly father is a reflection, imperfect, but a reflection of our Heavenly Father. Children often form their first understanding of God based on their relationship with their dad. Let your kindness, forgiveness, discipline, and presence point your children to the goodness of God. A father's influence is generational. Psalms 103:17. But from everlasting to everlasting, the Lord love is with those who fear him, and his righteousness with their children's children. God's plan for families is multi-generational. When a man follows God, the ripple effect touches not just his kids, but his grandkids and beyond. Even if you don't, even if you never had a godly father, you can be the first in that line. You can start a legacy of faith because it's never too late. To all the dads, father figures, and spiritual mentors, I say thank you. You're a role model. Your example is needed. Your legacy is being written every day. Let us strive to be men of integrity, faith, patience, and love. And let those who come after us may be truly blessed. You know, I was reading an article and it was talking about a prison in California. And so this is not with the political things that's going on there. They said 1 year, a prison in California, the inmates requested 1,000 cards to send to their mom. They said on Father's Day, the same prison, the same inmates only requested 6 cards for Father's Day. So it shows, you know, where we are and, you know, and maybe where we have come from. And, you know, I was just thinking as I was doing this lesson over the week, you know, I said, I grew up in a home where I never spent a day with my biological father. And so I didn't have that father knows best insight and everything else with that. And I kind of had made up in my mind, and God assisted me that I said, if I ever become a dad or a father, I'm going to be with my kids, and I'm going to mentor them and work with them and encourage them to be what they need to be. Uh, and so far, you know, the 3 kids are obviously all adults. They're all independent, working and have their own homes. And 2 of my kids, they don't have children, but you know, they're in a marital relationship. And I'm not saying that to bring myself up to a point where I'm examining myself, but I'm just saying that even for kids who don't have, you know, sometimes you find out what you need yourself. And one thing I think I want to always say in this is that, you know, God is our Father. And whether or not we have an earthly father who has done what should have been done, or whether or not you see the statistics, you know, one article said it takes minutes to be a father, but it takes a lifetime to be a dad. And the investment that we have. And for those of us who may be grandparents at this age, you know, what are we doing? What are we doing for the families that are around? You know, where Dot and I, we mentor at one of the local elementary schools. And, you know, just to see the kids, I had a kid that was named Joseph this past semester. And on the last day that we were mentoring, and he said, this has been my best time ever at this school. And it was just 1/2 an hour a week every Tuesday. And I said, you know, just the insight that you can have, the influence that we can have. And if we are the body of believers, we're the ones who have been sent. We are the ones who are called to go out. The influence and the DNA that God has provided for us in us is the DNA that we supposed to take. You know, Jesus said He said, no man lights a candle, and put it under a bushel. You take your candle and put it on a light stand. So I'm just, as we do this lesson, as we have done this lesson, I just want to be, I want to encourage us, whether or not you're male or female, wherever you are, whether you're a father, a stepfather, or whatever role that you have, God has given us the ability for us to do more. In action and also in prayer. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the time that you have given us. And Father, I just see that maybe Satan is so busy because the strength of the father, the strength of the dad is one, Father, that Satan has gone about to destroy in the homes, to take away the godly man that you would want to lead this home, to raise their children in a Christian type environment. And so, Father, our schools are lacking, our governments are lacking, our prisons, Father, are full of kids who have never had this father in their lives. And so, Father, we pray for them. We pray for for those who can have a second chance, that they can be mentored, that they can look, that they can seek you. Because overall, Father, you are our God and you are our Father. And so, Father, we just want to submit to you and lift you up. We praise you this morning in your Son's precious name. Amen.
Amen. I have to laugh. You were talking about living, like being two separate people or living two different lives. You're this person in front of people, and then you're this person behind closed doors. It made me start thinking about when my kids were little and you're trying to get everybody out the door to go to church, and you're wanting to wring their necks the whole way to church, and you're pulling the parking lot. It's like, okay, y'all be cool now. Are we the only family that ever did that?
Oh, no.
That was the first thing that came to mind with me on that. And I'm probably going to make some women mad with what I'm about to say. But we're all so guilty, especially us women. Let me put it, let me make sure I put this in good word, right, the right words. Is as we women have become more and more independent and out there in the workforce, we have slowly taken masculinity away from our boys and our men. And so we all have played a role in the change of the family and the importance of having, you know, both figures there to raise a family. I hate that, and I know there's a lot of people that will disagree with me on that. And I'm not saying women shouldn't. I mean, shoot, I'm out working and running companies and, you know, doing what God's gifted me to do. But we've lost our way that our most important role is being part of that,
I
playing
think
a big role in that family.
you're right, Wendy. I somewhere down here, I have the data of like the two parent home, and how there's so little interest anymore about the father going out to work and the mom staying at home. You know, for years it was one where when the mother said, I'm at home, mom, and the first kind of inclination is, oh, you don't work. Like
Ooh,
what you're doing during the day is you not work. That's not work. You're not contributing to the
mm,
family upkeep or the economic part of that. Even in the times when even the mother may be homeschooling, it's just that this society has gotten up to be so capitalistic, and I don't want to offend anyone, but it's always the earnings. you know, where we going, what we got,
Mhm.
how large our house is, how many cars we have. You know, I want to be a soccer mom. I get off work and take Johnny to soccer practice. And we kind of have lost our way
Mhm.
in a capitalistic society where it's get, and not where the thinking is more generational, that we can survive and we can be happy with just what we have, and we can raise our children, you know, for another generation. I was going to look for some data this morning. I was just thinking about, you know, many of our countries, like China, for instance, who had the premier or whoever the person is, you know, passed a law about you could only have one child per
Mhm.
family, and that during that time, these families were making sure, and I can't think how they can make sure unless it was abortion, that the child that they have would be a male child. And so if you go back and look at China, uh, male female ratio, you find it's so warped that you got so many males and so
Mm.
few females. And so therefore the two parent family is not possible because you got more males than you have females. And so they have altered God's plan, and now they want to change it. And so we find out in these countries now that the population, you know, is dying. I said, even in our country, you know, it's to the point where there's not enough, quote, American children being born each year, you know, to keep up with what we need in the future years for those who may decide or need Social Security. The income, influx of kids in that process is not there.
Mm.
So we have put things so out of kilter, either with capitalism or authoritarian type governments, that we have taken away God's plan of what He asked us to do is, you know, to reproduce, to love each other, and to teach our kids in the admonition of God. And
Mm.
we have gotten away from that.
Can I
Yep.
add something real quick?
Yes.
So, yeah, you're talking about all this stuff, and it kind of struck me that, you know, we sometimes we've gotten a little bit confused about how we feel love as humans and people and the way we were designed to. And it's not just having someone there to pick us up and to tell us it's going to be okay when things are hard, but we also need that soft touch. And God built women to do that very well, better than men, myself especially. But we also need those rules and guidelines and that firm hand to push us and help us embrace the struggle that's part of growth. And how, I mean, even the Bible says that, you know, we're tried with fire. That's how we grow. And so we need both parts of that. And, you know, I think as a society, we've forgotten that both are equally and individually important. And without both together, these children feel lost
Mm.
because you take away those rules and you have too soft of a touch, the kids go crazy and they don't know what to do. But you got a firm hand all the time with no soft touch to also uh, help them through when things are hurting and feel okay, then they also feel unloved.
Amen. You're absolutely right. Both of those views, I have that in some of the data. You know, you're right. You have to have a soft hand one time and a hard hand the next time because of love and instruction. Both of those are needed in a family.
Well, you know what's really cool is when you describe that, you're describing the love of God, what He has for us, because He uses both of those for us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get the soft hand and sometimes we don't. Right?
Right.
It's 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 just so cool. Thank you. This was terrific. And I wish all you fathers out there a very happy Father's Day and you stepfathers. Somebody posted earlier in the chat that, thank God for the stepfathers that have stepped up and been the father. Some of
Amen.
it might be just uncles that have stepped in um and just been that figure for kids growing up. I know Mary Hart talks about her stepfather all the time, how much she loved him and how much he took care of them, and just how special he was in her life. And it's just we need to remember all the people that have filled that role. So happy Father's Day to you guys.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Tom. Um, Bryan,
Good morning.
what's going on? We can't go any further too. We didn't bring this up about Israel bombing Iran last night and what's going on there. We need to really keep that whole situation in our prayers, because whether we Americans agree with everything that's going on or not, we're going to be dragged into this. We already are dragged into this, and I support. I'm going to say I support Israel 100,000%. We need to pray for everybody involved in this, because this is gonna affect all of us somehow. And I'm saying this before you talk, Bryan, because I'm wondering what it's going to do to our markets. Um, and I know that seems so capital like, capitalism like to say that, but because that's certainly not my only concern, but it'll affect a lot of things for us, and I'm interested in getting people's input on that. After you do your presentation, Bryan, so go ahead. You're
We haven't
mute.
seen a major effect so far in pre-hour trading, because I think this was just last night that it happened, or
Can
was
you
it
start
yesterday?
over? Because you were muted for a while. That first sentence. Start your sentence
Can you hear me
over.
now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any pre-market trading things going on right now. We're going to go take a live look at the markets. So this is the 10-year treasury, and it's down 0.002, which is not a significant change, but yesterday we saw some nice movements in the markets. So it's early still, right? Because the markets don't really open yet, but a lot of times we can get a glimpse of what's coming by looking at the pre-hour trading. So let's see if I can move this away. The big news that's come across in the financial markets is we've got the CPI numbers and the PPI numbers. So the PPI, Producers Price Index, this is wholesale inflation measurements. Headline came in 0.1% plus 0.1% month over month versus an estimate of 0.2%. So it came in a little bit soft. That's good news if you want mortgage rates to get better. We want to see inflation numbers coming in soft and under what the expectation is, obviously. Revised, we saw some revisions up actually to 0.2%, minus 0.2% from minus 0.5%. So we don't see a lot of revisions in the upward trend. So when we do, we just want to pay attention that does come in. All these revisions, they never move the markets. Nobody ever pays attention to them, but we want to keep track of the data that we're seeing and that's coming in. Core, when we look at the core, it strips out things that are affected by political things, right? Wars, they're affected by weather-related things. We can't control those things. The Fed can't pull a lever to try to improve or stimulate the weather, right? So the core just measures a more precise data set. And we saw a 0.1% increase month over month versus an estimate of 0.3% increase. So this was good news, seeing this Producers Price Index coming in a little bit on the weekend. Year over year, we're at plus 0.2.6 from 0.2.5 year over year. So this was right at estimates. And then there was a revision from May to 2.4% year over year. So we are up a little bit from the revised April numbers. And then core, we were plus 3% from plus 3.2% year over year. The expectation was 3.1% increase, so it came in a little bit soft, so that was really good news. We switch over to the consumer price index, and we're going to look at core first because this has a lot of good data in it for us. When we look at how they measure inflation in the CPI numbers, shelter is a huge portion of that. And we've seen before there's a lag effect. They use a 12-month rolling average for shelter, and it really has held up a lot of the CPI numbers, maybe artificially, because it's not looking at current real-time data that we can get from, you know, Zillow and Redfin and some other sources on new rents and existing rents, you know, monthly changes. This is an annual change, but we did see a decline year over year from 3.99 to 3.86. So this is big because, again, it makes up 44% of the core readings. So when we break it down a little bit further, we're looking at actual rents, and month over month, we are 0.21, year over year, 3.81. And then the owner equivalent rent is a number that we saw kind of come down a bit. Lodging away, this is going to be like your hotels. That's going to measure your lodging away numbers. That came in a little bit soft. So this is opening up some opportunity.
What's owner equivalent rent?
Owner equivalent rent is the best source of inflation data that we have. You get random people called and they say, hey, Mr. Random person who owns a home, what do you think you'd rent your house out for if you were going to rent it today?
Oh yeah, I call that number BS.
Yes, yeah, and it is 32% of the weightings for shelter.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was saying.
It's exactly what we're basing all of our financial data on, is a couple random phone calls to random people who have no idea what the real rental market looks like. We did see some softening in some of the car areas. Insurance has still kind of been kind of tough. This is motor vehicle insurance, which measures into the core inflation numbers. So overall, the core CPI numbers were actually pretty good. When we look at the headline numbers, month over month, we are up 0.08%. Now they round, so they reported a 0.1%. But when we look at the actual data, it's a little weaker than a 0.1%. And then year over year, we're at 2.35% from 2.31%. So food, 13% of that weighting, energy 6.4%, gas is 3%. And we did see energy and gas come down in the year over year. Food actually was up recently. So is this tariffs? Where are tariffs coming in? Are industries just absorbing some of the tariffs, or are they just not really a big factor in the marketplace? So it's kind of curious to just watch and see how these proceed. Now, if we take the run rates, so we take the monthly numbers from the last reading that we just got, and if we were just to take that one monthly number for 3 months, that gives us a run rate. So if it was to stay on for a whole year, if we annualized the 3 months, we'd be at a core inflation number of 1.7. That's down from 2.1. So when you localize and you stop looking at a 12-month average, which is what everybody focuses on, if you just focus in and say, what if this month was to continue on? Man, we are looking really good on inflation. It's making inflation look like it is still coming down. Same when we look at the 6-month run rate instead of the annual. We're from a 2.9% to 2.6. And then headline is telling the same story. 3 months, we're dropping from 1.5 to 1% inflation. And then the 6 month, we're dropping from 3% to 2.6%. So this is just, again, if you re-look at the data and you look at it more localized, more current than what the government looks at, which is the annual numbers, it tells a little bit of a different story. Now, when we look at jobless claims, we're seeing this trend continue. This is the initial jobless claims. And you can see that we were on a downward trend until January. We were on a downward trend of new jobless claims with some anomaly spikes. And then since then, we've been on this upward trend with some anomaly spikes. A lot of these anomaly spikes are going to be because of a holiday week. The week before might have been a holiday week, so less reporting happened during that week. And the following week, we saw that. But if we look at the same data and we just measure it differently, right? This is just a bar graph of that same data. It tells the same story, downward trend and upward trend. But you've got these anomaly spikes maybe because of short weeks. But look, currently, we're not seeing this as a spike. We're seeing this as a trend. We've got 3 weeks in a row where we're really kind of coming up. in these numbers, and we've not seen that before. So this could show additional weakness in the jobs market, and maybe some layoffs are really starting to hit into the jobless claims. The continued jobless claims, this again, it's a little bit of a hard number to really look at, because after about 6 months, every state's a little bit different, but you know, on average, maybe it's 6 months of benefits, and then you fall out and you're no longer getting benefits of this. But we are now climbing up this mountain of the COVID era. You know, this was when COVID was coming down from unemployment, but we've seen, you know, a big trend line up, and then things were kind of getting better for a little bit. And now we're seeing this trend line go back up again, and we're at 1.92. We're getting closer and closer to that 2 million mark for continued unemployment. So once you're out of a job, it's harder and harder for you to get back into the workforce. So when we look at the Fed futures, we just got some jobs data last week, the BLS report, which came in stronger than anticipated, but no one's really trusting and believing that number. This initial jobless claims tells a much different story than the BLS when you look at the sentiment. And so right now, if we look at June 18th is the next Fed meeting, it's a 97% chance that we're not going to see a rate cut. So there's a 2.9% chance that there is, and a week ago it was 2.6%. So we've not seen a lot of change in June. When we look at July, July has seen a big change. A week ago, there was an 83% chance we were not going to see a rate cut. And now we're starting to see about a 25% chance that we are going to see a rate cut. So that is increasing in the last week. And then September is a really big difference. There was a 40% chance a week ago that we would not see a rate cut. Now there's only a 25% chance that we will not see a rate cut. So there's just more and more suggestion that with this, you know, recent jobs and inflation data, that the Fed is likely going to continue on their path of cutting rates. It's just, when do they do that? Maybe it's July. There's not a huge chance, and September is looking like the month right now that we're going to see that. And then as we go forward throughout the year, October, there's a very little chance the rates have not been cut. So this is where we're currently at, the 4.25 to 4.5. So we want to continue to watch jobless numbers and inflation numbers. When we look at the markets, this is the 10-year treasury. So on this chart, up means more expensive. And we had that jobs report, that BLS report that came in on last Friday, and we saw a big spike in the 10-year treasury. And this was a little bit scary because there was a lot of room to go. And if we lost this Fibonacci level, this level of resistance, there was a lot of room to go. So we really didn't want to see us approach this line again like we did in May. But hopefully May was as bad as it gets for current. Hopefully this ends up being a top, and we've seen this kind of, you know, improvement, and then bad news comes in with the jobs market, and then improvement again. But once we get underneath some of these lines, we've got a Fibonacci level here, this white line, and then this is the 200-day moving average, and this is a hard one to bust through. So if we can make some gains and continue to see the market improve, if we can fall under this 4.3 at 4.28 number, then we've got a lot of room to the south where we can see things really starting to get better. And we did see a very slight dip into this territory once before in the not too recent history. When we look at the 30-year treasury on this chart, up means cheaper. Things are getting better. So again, we've gotten this nice increase, this nice trend line from May 27th. Hopefully, you know, we had a whole month of things getting worse, and then it kind of flipped directions. We tried to get above this 200-day moving average. We've tested it a few times. We've not broken through. Yesterday, we stopped right on it. We tried to get above it. You can see this little green candlestick. And when you see a little green candlestick, that means that the market got up to this level at that day, but then it pulled back and closed right on the 200-day moving average. And this morning, we're starting in pre-hours just above that 200-day moving average. But look at all this green pasture. If we can get above this resistance level of 101.39, and this is the UMBS, the Universal Mortgage-Backed Security, the 6% coupon that's trading on Wall Street, it would be fantastic to bust through here. And now we've got some really, really good room to improve. When we look at today's rates, we're still just under 7%. Things have come back a little bit, 6.85%. And then I liked this chart that I found. This is showing mortgage application volume, and it's also got mortgage rates on there. And it tells a beautiful story of when we see market rates dip, then we see mortgage applications spike. Right now, this time we saw mortgage rates dip, and we didn't see a lot happen right there at the turn of the year or the middle of the year last year. But we saw a dip here in 24. This was September. And man, mortgage application really increased. But if you take a line and you start here and you draw up to this, this is a positive trend line that we're seeing more and more applications coming in on the overall. Now, it's nothing like we saw during COVID era interest rates, but we're about 20% up year over year on purchase applications from the same time last year. That is a good sign for us. When we look at inventory, North Carolina is starting to make this list up here, Wendy, and I'm not loving that. But we're feeling it locally that we have, this is a 1-year shift in active housing inventories. And North Carolina, we're at the top of the pack right now. We have 50% more homes on the market right now than we did a year ago. Colorado has really moved up, California, Nevada. Now, our troublemakers that have been showing for the mass amounts of inventory, they're not up as much year over year. They're more up on a 5-year trend. So they've seen things getting a little bit worse this last year, but the year before was when they really stacked on a lot of inventory. So you've got Florida and Texas that are kind of in those hot markets of high inventory levels. I found this article about price cuts surging to a 9-year high, and these three markets are the worst offenders for price cuts. So this is realtor.com. You can find this article on their news and insights. But price cuts were reported on 19.1% of all for sale homes, the highest percentage for any May since 2016, and the 5th consecutive month of growing percentage increases on price reductions. The top 3 markets, Phoenix saw the most. They were at 31.3% of their inventory had price cuts. Tampa was the second highest. That one does not surprise. And then Denver, Colorado was the third. So that is, again, Denver's kind of been growing in that inventory, and they're seeing a lot of price cuts as well. I don't think this article had anything else I wanted to share with you. Some good news, maybe. This is Fannie Mae's home purchase settlement. So this is their measuring of the likelihood that people want to go out and buy a house. And we are seeing a nice increase on this. Now, we saw a little dip going through the end of the year and the beginning of the new year, but it's back on a positive trend line. So that hopefully means we've got more and more people that are going to be looking to get into the housing market. And as interest rates come down a little bit, if we can get through some of those hurdles and we see rates come down, we'll see application volume go up, and then maybe we'll start to see a decrease of inventory as we get more consumers to buy into this market. I wanted to share, I got my Zoom popping over my tab, so I can't change where we're at, but I wanted to share the North Carolina fundraiser. I'll post a link to this, but I've got a fundraiser set up. We are going to be on a cruise next week for Chase. Make-A-Wish is just an amazing foundation. So I'm going to share a donation link in case you want to share that with your people on Facebook or social media. I'll post a link to that as soon as I get off chatting. And then the last thing I wanted to go over, and I saved this to the last because I didn't know how long I'd have gone so far, Wendy. So you tell me if I need to get out or if you want to go into the top 8 things that the Toll Brothers CEO wants you to know about the market. Do you want to go through this report real quick, or do you want to push this to a couple weeks?
Let's push this a couple weeks because I don't want to take too much time away from Amanda, but
That's why I saved this one for last, because this one will be a little bit more detailed. So I'll post this link. I do think it is behind a paywall. So I think there are some people who know how to get behind paywall. So I'll post a link to the article so you can try to go.
Thank you. But don't forget it. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good stuff. Always good stuff. So grateful. So grateful. All right. So if you were here 2 weeks ago, you heard Jeff Watson talking, and Jeff actually brought up some information about what Amanda Sutherlin was going through with, I guess it was a rogue title company that she was dealing with. And we were really talking about title issues and that kind of thing. And of course, Amanda had a good story. And when you have a good story and you say it in front of the group like this, you too will have to step up and share it with the rest of us. You may get asked to speak, and she was gracious enough to agree to do that for us. So, Amanda, are you available?
I am, thank you.
Awesome. I'm just gonna leave the floor to you.
Okay. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and open that. Let
And
me know if you can see
it's
my
coming
screen.
up. Yep, we see it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you guys for having me. It's such an honor to be here today with you, speaking and sharing my story. It's my hope that through education and through sharing my real life event here, we can prevent fraud from happening to anyone else, because it has been an absolute nightmare. I've put together a PowerPoint so you can follow along. This is a bit of a rough draft, so if you see anything I need to edit, please feel free to give me some constructive criticism, as I have been asked to speak on a much larger stage in regards to this exact thing. So I would very much appreciate you guys giving me some criticism. Fool me once, spotting real estate scams, or how not to lose $190,000 via a quitclaim deed. This is my contact information. My name, again, is Amanda Sutherlin. That's my phone number and my email. Please feel free to reach out to me or message me. I'm an investor. I've been at it a little bit over 10 years. And as Wendy said in her little advertisement, I've got the scars to prove it. I like that. Thank you, Wendy. We'll jump right in. This is the house that I fraudulently purchased. It's located in Spring Hill, Florida, not far from my actual residence, actually. It's a beautiful home, and I'll just jump right in. So this was a wholesale deal. I've given this presentation a couple times to a few local brokerages, and I've come to learn that not everyone kind of understands how a wholesale deal works. It is important that I go over this because due to the nature of or the structure of the deal, a lot of the information that I now have didn't come to light until after I purchased the house. A wholesaler left a note on the front door. He received a call from the owner on deed. The owner on deed was named Jimmy Rogers. The wholesaler put it under contract with Jimmy and then assigned the contract to myself as the investor of the end-use buyer. That in title is like an A to B, B to C transaction, meaning there's two different contracts, and the wholesaler makes a fee in between those two contracts. He is basically flipping the contract, not technically selling the house. The wholesaler name was Jimmy Rogers, and I am putting this out there because Jimmy is actively in our community trying to sell. Actually, he's trying to resell this house that he fraudulently sold to me. He's setting up buyers and things like that, advertising in the local community to sell this house.
It looks
He is
like he's
not,
trying to sell a lot of things.
yeah, he is not yet apprehended. So he is
Wow.
active in my market, which is Hernando County, Pasco, and he resides in Pinellas County. So if you are doing deals in those markets and his name pops up, please, please, please be extra cautious. Jimmy has 56 priors, including fraud, meth, cocaine, theft, breaking and entering, child molestation ×2 under the age of 16. He is no good. He's bad news. The true owners of the house are Barbara Aswood and Leonard Holder. Barbara is 90 years old. She lives in Bermuda, and son has power of attorney. Leonard passed in 2017. This is all very pertinent information. Jimmy told the wholesaler that his grandparents left him the house, and both grandparents had passed away, and he's now selling the house. that's the story he was giving everybody, including title. Some quick facts, as I mentioned, this was a wholesale deal. It was supposed to be a double close. I had 2 private lenders on this deal. I actually had no money of my own in the deal at all. One was for purchase and one was for the rehab portion of the deal. This passed title and this passed underwriting. It was closed and funded, wires and out. I purchased with a warranty deed. I have title insurance, owner's policy, and my lenders had, or my lender had their lender's policy. I will tell you that for the purchase, my private money lender is an active investor in the community. My other private money lender is my son, who he's in the Army and currently in fire school. He was deployed, so he came home with, you know, a nice chunk of change, and he wants to be in the deal. Unfortunately, this was his first deal with me, and it turned out to be a fraud. But he is learning quite a bit now with this deal. The title company is United Title Solutions in Brooksville, and the underwriter was WFG National Title Company. I have since found 2 houses here in Hernando County within the same ring. So I'll go over more facts, but there are 2 houses that they fraudulently deeded over to themselves with the same people. The investigation is still ongoing. No arrests haven't been made yet. What I'm being told is fraud cases take a long, long time, and they have to get subpoenas from the banks and the, I guess there's just a lot of moving parts, but unfortunately, Jimmy is still actively out in the community trying to do these fraudulent deals, and he's not been apprehended yet. It's been over a month. Most of the details didn't come to light until after the sale, unfortunately. The other house that they fraudulently deeded over to themselves, they're actually living in right now. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go over the actual deeds themselves, and you can find these on the Hernando County Clerk of Court. They're not on the property appraiser because they were stripped, and they're back in the rightful owners' names at this time, but they are still on the Clerk of Court sites. So what I want to review are the red flags on the actual deeds themselves, and how you can look at a quitclaim deed and kind of right off the bat know that, whoa, these are some red flags. I need to bring this up to title. When you're underwriting your own deals, these are the things that I now know because of this debacle, what I need to look for in the future deals if there's a quitclaim deed involved at all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle between my PowerPoint and the deeds themselves. Hang on. So let me know if you guys can see this. Okay. So the first red flag is that it's a quitclaim deed, period. So not all quitclaim deeds are fraudulent, but a good number of them are. And what we see is these come into play a lot of times amongst family when they're deeding property back and forth amongst themselves at the kitchen table. That's not fraud. That's just a way that they do it, you know, amongst families, and we see that quite often. But if it is a quitclaim deed involved at all, especially if it was a deed prior to your purchase, then that's a red flag to, whoa, wait, let's just stop and look at this deed more closely. The second one is file date versus created date. And what I mean by that is look at this deed. So if we look at this deed, when it was filed and recorded was 3/14/25. But if we come down here and we look, the deed was executed on the 9th of July of 2021. So why was it created in 2021 but not filed until 2025? Huge red flag. And again, if it's amongst family, they do kind of do this and put it in the drawer and pull it out when needed. But if there's a discrepancy in dates, that's a big red flag. As we look at this deed and we look at details more closely, we're going to come down here and we're going to look at some addresses. So we're just going to like pick apart this deed and go through some of the facts. So Jimmy Rogers, if you live here local in the community in Hernando County, you might recognize this address, this 4142 Mariner Boulevard. That is our local Publix on the corner here. So he's used the Publix mailing address as his own, and we know he's not living at the Publix. But that, if you just start Googling addresses, and either it's a store, or if we come down and look at the witness addresses, where are they? Here they are. These addresses don't exist. For Francis Beck, that address does not exist. That's not an address in the community. So that's a red flag. Deceased signers. So remember early in my presentation, we spoke about Leonard. So Leonard passed in 2017. Leonard was not alive when this deed was executed in 2021. Huge red flag. Additionally, our witness, Francis Beck, he was not alive either. I believe he died in 2018. So we have 2 deceased signers. The signatures, if you get this far, when you're looking at the deed, for sure this is like probably 99% fraudulent. But for sure, if you get down to the signers or the signatures, what I did is I went back to the original deeds and I started looking at the signatures of both Barbara and Leonard. Before I kind of figured out Leonard was passed. It took me a minute to figure that out because they both live in Bermuda and Barbados at one time. So it was difficult to skip trace these guys. But these are the exact signature from 1986 was the first deed on this property with Barbara and Leonard. And the signatures are exact. I mean, exact, like somebody traced them. The notary signature. So if we come down and we look at who notarized this, we can see that the notary, the signature between the seal and what was signed, it's spelled wrong. Like there's a Y or a G here at the end of the name, and that's not what she has. Additionally, this notary stamp was stolen in 2020, reported to the commission in 2020, didn't expire until 2022. They are in possession of this notary stamp. And both deeds that I've found are backdated so that the notary stamp is still quote unquote good, through 2022. So the other deed that I found was, I think, created in 2020, and we'll look at that as well. But that's a huge red flag. We'll go over some of the other red flags in this deal in particular. One I want to talk about, which I didn't know until I started researching, but in the state of Florida, and I know this group is all over the US, but in our state, the deed requirements changed in January of 24. So in January of 2024, the state now requires that witnesses have their addresses included on the deeds, where prior to that, witnesses, you didn't have to have the addresses. So when I spoke to underwriting and title, and I asked, what was missed? Why was this missed? Why was it overlooked? Why did it, pass everyone's tests and go through, all the way through funding and sold? And they said one of the things that the underwriter missed, and title did too, is the fact that this deed was the current format and 2024 going on, but it was created in 2021. So this format didn't exist in 2021. It didn't exist till 2024. So you can go through and look at deed formats and the requirements that they had throughout the years and see if there's any discrepancy there. With this particular deal, there were high pressure tactics on the sales side. I was not aware of this. Like I said, it was a wholesale deal. So I came in as like a third party. I was not face to face with the seller. I was not face to face with Jimmy. Had I was, I think I would have been a little leery of his story, especially after I walk the property and I see the family photos and they just, these didn't look like the grandparents that Jimmy had. Let's just say that way. So, but on his end, there were high pressure tactics to get title to close this deal on a certain day by a certain time. The reason was Jimmy had a 1-day pass out of his halfway house to come up and close this deal. That was on a Friday. We closed on a Friday. It wasn't until Sunday afternoon that I figured out that this was a fraudulent deal. But he had to close on that Friday, and he was getting out of his halfway house on that Monday. He was going to come up here, pull his funds, and get out of Florida because he was tired of Florida. So very, very high pressure on with title themselves is what I was being told. So another red flag are your sellers are senior citizen owners. This ring is targeting senior citizens and the owners that live out of the country. Both my owners lived in Bermuda, so they're not even here. He had a story that was too good to be true. His grandparents left him this house, and the selling price was very suspicious. Now, the price that I paid wasn't suspicious because I paid, my price included a wholesale fee, which I wasn't really aware of that fee, typically or not, until after the fact. But this was supposed to be a double close, so I got to see, what the fee was anyways. But the selling price to the wholesaler should have been a huge red flag that it was being sold at such an under market value. So with that being said, what happened was we closed on a Friday, and it wasn't until Sunday afternoon, 2 days later, that I figured out that this was a fraudulent case. What I do, and in my practice of buying and selling houses, when I purchase a house, whether it's a flip or a rental, more often than not, what I do is I go to the neighbors, I knock on the door, I introduce myself. Hi, I'm the new owner. A lot of times I'm doing unrepaired sinkholes, and there's a lot of equipment coming in. We're disruptive to the neighborhood, dumpsters, the whole 9 yards. So I always go to the neighbors. I want them on my side. I want to make friends. It's also a good strategy to find out other homes that might be for sale on the street. So I did that on Sunday afternoon. I went to the across the street neighbors and I introduced myself as the new owner. And they were like, oh, well, I guess you know about all the cops that were there last night. And, I'm like, no, I don't. I don't have any idea what you're talking about. Apparently, one of the neighbors called the cops for suspicious activity. They came, checked out the house. I had already secured the house, so they were not able to get in. But what I did was I called the sheriff's department and I said, I understand you were at my house last night. I'd like to know, what happened, what was the suspicious activity, what was going on. And they said, well, we're going to send a deputy out right now. When the deputy showed up, they had 100 questions. Who are you? When did you buy this house? Where did you close? Do you have documentation? Where did you wire the money? And we're sitting there at the kitchen table inside this house, and it started to unravel. And I'm like, wait a minute, are you telling me what I think you're telling me? I'm like, is the owners aren't dead, and who is Jimmy? And so everything unraveled, and apparently the owners are still alive. Barbara is still alive. She did not sell the house. They did not know who Jimmy is. They did not authorize the sale. And it has been an absolute nightmare ever since. We have yet to be fully funded. And it's been, gosh, what has it been? It's been 6 weeks since we've closed this deal, and my private money lender has yet to be fully refunded from this. Underwriting and title have had to come out of pocket with their E&O insurance because they were not able to retrieve all the funds on this deal. They were not able to retrieve the wholesale fee and then a few other wires that had went out, and they're about $60,000 or $70,000 short of being able to fully fund this deal.
Was the wholesaler involved in this?
The wholesaler was not involved. For a long time, we were kind of, wondering. Wholesaler was not involved at all. He was an innocent victim as well.
So he has not given back the money that he made.
No, and underwriting and title, I guess, are threatening a lawsuit with him for those funds. It was a $40,000 wholesale fee.
Oh my goodness, on a
Yeah.
house like that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder about him, the wholesaler, and his integrity for not realizing his part in this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been very challenging. I will say that challenging on all fronts, dealing with the wholesaler, title, underwriting, the detectives. Jimmy, when I still technically own the house, he's now sending. I still had, at that time, I technically owned the house. I had insurance on the house. All the things, and Jimmy's sending buyers and meeting buyers at the house to sell it again because he was unable to pull his funds. He didn't get paid, so now he's trying to get paid again. It's
Unbelievable.
It has been a wild ride for sure.
So let's talk about things that that could have been done to stop this in its tracks. And I actually I sent a message to Jeff. My chat's too small, so I can't see if you were able to answer, Jeff. But I mean, we pull background checks on all of our borrowers. We get permission from them to be able to do that. Can you pull a background on a wholesaler, or pull a background on whoever claims the seller to be?
You could skip trace them for sure. That's how I found all Jimmy's.
Well, I mean a background check, something that would when I don't know if skip trace is the exact same thing as a background, but did it show all the things that he'd been arrested for?
Yeah, I was able to
Okay.
go to the county and the state website to pull all his charges and see, a clear pattern of years and years of fraud and just no good. He's just not good.
And he used his real name.
He used his real name at title, at the bank, all the way through. He used his real name.
Okay, so is this the one too where we were talking about a couple weeks ago? Was the title company involved in this? Like, were they fraudulent or just not real smart?
Gosh, so title, they're not involved. Although we, for a long time, we thought they were, just because of their action and inactions. Sunday, when I was sitting with the detectives inside the house, I actually called the owner of the title company on her cell phone, put her on speakerphone, allowed her to speak to the detectives right then and there, gave her the case number, which had already been created, and basically begged her to flag those funds as fraud. By Monday, I think it was like 11 noon, she had not flagged any of the funds as fraud. She got up Monday morning and went on like a Miami road trip.
Unbelievable.
So I actually took it upon myself to go to Jimmy's financial institution and get those funds flagged, as possible fraud. Another thing title did was Friday when they closed, they gave Jimmy a live check for his portion. And he took it to the bank. The bank said, well, we can deposit it, of course, but there's going to be a hold. This
Right.
account is brand new. It's an over 6-figure check. Jimmy didn't want to hold on it, so he brought the live check back to title. Within the same hour, she sent out a live wire, to his financial institution after a live check walked out the door. What I'm being told protocol is, when that scenario happens, they have to put a stop check or stop payment on that check, which takes 24 to 48 hours, and then they can send a wire. So she actually sent the wire without the stop check. So that was very alarming to us. But because Jimmy wasn't able to get out of his halfway house until late afternoon Monday, I was able to flag those funds by noon on Monday, so that when he showed up to the bank, he wasn't able to pull them.
And that's something I think it's important to say, because that's something similar to that happened to us back in 2000. I'm thinking it was 2016, where we were able to, we called the financial institution that we wired the money to
Mm-hmm.
and talk directly to them, and they were able to flag it and not release those funds. And we were able to work things out that way. But I don't think people realize they can call the bank that they sent the money to and put a flag just so they're aware, and they'll at least stop it until everything is taken care of. Lou from
Yeah,
Texas had a question too.
Good
yeah. My
morning
private
from,
money lender and I got on a conference call with Grow Financial, and got the flags, or got the funds flagged. I was actually in my truck on my way to do it in person at the bank, but it was able to get flagged. I was pulling into the parking lot to go in personally, but we were able to do it over the phone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Go ahead, Lou.
yes, I'm looking at your, good morning from Houston, Texas. I'm looking at your red flags there. That looks like a great start to a checklist. I don't know if the last time I looked at a title, I actually looked at all these things. So I'm thinking maybe create a checklist from that would be great for the group.
Oh yeah, that'd
Um,
be great. Handout too for future events. Thank you. I like that idea.
Yeah, good feedback. The other thing I want to ask, and it might be kind of stupid, how do you find out that people are deceased? Like not only the sellers, but the signers, the witnesses. How were you able to find that out?
I have a skip tracing service that I use. So I was able to find those things out utilizing it's called Ben Verified, a skip tracing service.
Yeah, yeah.
But if gosh, so if it's the quit claim deed and you quickly glance and there's a discrepancy with the file date versus created date, and maybe you're looking at it and it just kind of doesn't look right, honestly, bring it to the professionals is what I would recommend. Your title company, a reputable title company, and say, hey, look at this, what do you think? I would definitely not go at this alone. These are the red flags that I found on this deed in particular. But if you're underwriting your own deals and you're looking at things and something just doesn't look right, especially with the number of red flags that were on mine, then I would definitely take it to a reputable title company. And I've sent this file start to finish, purchase contract all the way through Alta, to several title companies, local attorneys. I've had appraisers reach out to me. And the very consistent feedback with just looking at the file alone is like, this would have never passed. This would have never closed at our office. What they would do is get affidavits from, let me pull it up here. They would have got affidavit from Leonard and Barbara stating that, basically they did quit claim deed this over to Jimmy. But as we know, Leonard is passed, and Barbara is 90. Here's the other, oh gosh, that's not it. This is the other deed that I found here in Hernando County. Again, very consistent file date 4/14/25, created date August of 2020. This owner is dead. He was elderly and passed. But you come down here and you look, it is the same exact notary stamp.
Yeah.
So they're in possession of this notary stamp. I don't, God knows what they're doing with it right now.
Okay, this is good stuff. So Lou has a continued question. I have to
Yes.
go. I have another call, and Wendell is taking over as the host. So
Okay.
thank you a million times. Thank you. Go ahead, Lou.
Yes, this was actually to the entire group. Do you think a title company like Stewart Title would have been a better choice? What
Any
does the group
title
think?
company would have been a better choice. This was a very new title company. It was not my title of choice. It was a wholesaler's title company. And I went to a networking event a couple weeks before I purchased this a couple weeks before I even saw the house. And this title company sponsored that networking event with food and drinks and things like that. So I actually met the entire group face to face, shook hands, looked them in the eye, at this networking event. And they got up and they gave a great commercial about their investor friendly. They catered to investors. They answered their phone 24/7. Like if you had to get a hold of them on a weekend, they got up and they gave like a nice commercial that if you had to get a hold of them on the weekend, they will answer the phone. And that's exactly how I had their phone number and was able to contact them on a Sunday afternoon, is because that's their, what they cater, what they do is answer the phone on the weekend. So it was the first time I'd ever used this title company. It'll be the last, but I had prior knowledge of them due to this networking event that I went to.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'd like to follow up on Lou's question along the lines of what you just said. And there's a lot of wholesalers that do exactly what you're talking about, insisting on using their title company. And I'd defer to Jeff Watson to talk about the legality of that. My understanding is that as a buyer, and maybe this applies more to if you're purchasing a primary residence for yourself, but as the buyer, my understanding is you have the legal right to insist on using your own title. In light of this situation, would you do business with a wholesaler that won't allow you to use your vetted title company in the future?
I think moving forward, and I've had a couple debacles in the past with this exact scenario, not fraudulent deals, but just things that title didn't catch, like liens and things like that on the property. But I would probably have title search ran, through my own title company that I prefer, outside of, the wholesaler's title company. If I can't get the wholesaler talked into using my title, I would take the file to one of my trusted agents and then just have them run it for me.
So pay the extra to
Pay the extra. Trust me, pay the extra, whatever. It will be well worth your while. Trust me.
Another tactic you can use is if they're insistent on their title company, you can require that the title policy, the owner's title policy, be issued by an underwriter or insurer of your choice, such as Old Republic, First American, Stewart, Chicago, one of the big ones. That's one of the other red flags in this deal, is that the title insurer that was underwriting this deal is a smaller, lesser known company that only does regional stuff. So yeah, I'll go close at Hillbilly RS Title Company, but I want a First American Eagle policy. And that's going to cause all sorts of problems, because then First American's got to approve the deal. And that's going to slow down a lot of that nonsense.
I have a question. I'm wondering, Jeff, thank you. That was great. I'm wondering, as a case study, if you sent this title to one of the big name title companies, if they would catch it.
Oh, that'd be interesting. I should probably do that. I will tell you that the underwriting was supposed to send out fraudulent alert, like fraud alerts on this property itself, and they never did. So let's say Jimmy does get this thing under contract and takes it to a different title company, and which has a different underwriting team. I'm not sure what would happen because nobody flagged the property itself as fraud, and that's what they're supposed to do. There's flags that they can email everyone kind of under their umbrella to say, hey, this property has fraud associated to it. But as far as I know, that has not been done. Nobody wanted to take responsibility in this transaction. Neither title or underwriting. It was very disappointing. They actually came to me and wanted me to prove that this was fraud before they would take initiative to flag the funds, send out the alerts. They're like, can you provide us death certificates for Leonard? Like, that's not my job.
What is it you have to do to get the title insurance company to take responsibility for it? What are you buying when you buy title insurance?
In my case, I can only speak on my case. This only happened to me once, and I hope it never happens again. They wanted the case number with the sheriff's department, of course. I didn't create a case number. It was already created. The family created, a case with the sheriff's department before they even knew about me, right? That was on Saturday. On Sunday is when I called the sheriff's department to see what the heck was going on. So underwriting and title wanted that case number, and they requested death certificates, for the folks on title, which, I'm like, why are you asking me for death certificate? You're underwriting, you're like investigators, right? You have access to way more data than I do. So, wasn't able to produce a death certificate from Bermuda. It was very frustrating, to say the least. I don't know how else I could have forced them to take responsibility and move this thing any faster. It was, a lot of emails going back and forth. And although I was, very polite but stern and direct, we're still not funded, and we're still asking for our money. It's actually not my money, it's my private money lender's money, which in my case, the way I feel about it is way worse. I would rather lose my money than somebody else's money. I don't want to burn that bridge ever. So I've been handling this as if, like, how do I say, like, it means more to me to get him his money back than if I had just lost mine, if that makes sense. At one point in time, underwriting basically quit communicating with us. So we felt like probably there was a lawsuit brewing here, and that it was going to be like a lawsuit that would have to get us funded. But I'm not exactly sure why they stopped communicating and stopped, answering our questions and things like that after the fact. It was already very well proven that this was fraud. The smoking gun really was that Leonard was dead at time of signing.
Jeff Watson, can you respond to the responsibility of the insurance company?
Oh, you're muted.
I can't, not at this time. I don't have enough specifics to answer that. I can just tell you that there is a huge cover their backside movement being made by the title company. They're not telling the truth. Amanda hasn't touched on all of the juicy, gory details of this deal. There's even more ineptitude by the title officer in this deal. And so there's a lot still to be seen. I think the underwriter, which is a small regional company, is really trying to figure out how they were hoodwinked by their agent. I'll leave it at that.
So does the error and omissions stuff come into play? Does the actual insurance for a clean title come to play? How does that get dispersed, or what? Do they have to go to court for that, or what?
Yeah, you've got two sets of lawyers from two different insurance companies pointing fingers at each other right now, trying to figure out who's going to pay what. And then you have the inability to get some of the money back. So you've got another lawsuit with going after the wholesaler who won't return his funds. and some of the other money that went out. So you've got 3 different lawsuits cooking here right now. So it's going to take a while. They're all going to have to get filed or get consolidated or get worked out. So this could be a rather interesting one to watch.
I will
Jeff,
say this, yeah, this was also supposed to have been a double close. The wholesaler paid $3,500 for transactional funding on the front end of the deal to hide his wholesale fee. When I got to the closing table, all that was on my closing documents for me to see, and I kept thinking, why did he put transactional funding on this? You know, because I'm the type of investor, I don't really care how much you make as a wholesale fee, does not bother me. As long as my numbers work, I don't care how much you make, if it's 5,000, it's 50,000, whatever. It does, but because the wholesaler and I we know each other, but we had never done business, he didn't want to ruin a relation, or he felt like he might ruin a relationship with me. And I'm like, well, then you don't know me very well, because it does not matter to me. But he did go and get transactional funding. So that was another wire that had went out in this deal, was the transactional funding. On his end, he paid $3,500, but it didn't end up being a double close. They didn't close it outright. So not only, did Jimmy get paid, but then we had transactional funding and then private money lenders. It was a big convoluted mess, and she's not been able to get some of those funds back. And I'm not exactly sure which funds those are. I know it's the $40,000 wholesale fee that he's not returning.
Jeff, can you give maybe some words of wisdom here, or some tips, top 10 tips or something?
Let me do that next week. Let's let Amanda go through the rest of her slides, because I don't want to give you the tips until you've seen all the facts.
Thank you.
Well, this was really it. This is all I have, for you guys as far as red flags on a quitclaim deed. If you have a quitclaim deed involved in your transaction, I would absolutely, stop and read more into it. Look at that deed very closely. Look at the data that's on the deed itself that you can, pull, the dates, the signatures, the signers, is the the addresses, are they real addresses? Those are quick things that you can quickly look at and see if there is possible fraud going on right here. And if that's the case, I would absolutely take it to a reputable title company and say, hey, listen, something just doesn't look right, and can you look at this and run this and see what we have here?
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
So
I have a different wrinkle that I've heard a lot about, and doesn't sound like it applies in this case, but I've heard a lot of talk about doing this and could be a potential opportunity for fraud. Hear a lot about people trying to sidestep restrictions on wholesaling by an assignment of contract, by creating an entity, packaging it inside the entity, and then selling the entity. You hear a lot about that online. I've never seen a specific fraud case, but I did get taken on a business acquisition for partial equity. And one of the things that they did that I didn't realize until after the fact was a problem was they asked for payment to a different entity. So I would say, if anybody's trying to sell you a property that way, an entity versus assignment of contract, in addition to real estate professionals, you should also be engaging with professionals that understand business sales and how to vet all entities involved on that side as well.
Yep. All right. I'm going to make one comment and then I've got to go. Amanda, thank you for letting me get you into this, into this presentation. And I want to thank you for how much candor you've shown both here and in our conversations. because you and I had a good long chat on a flight from Tampa to Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. And so let me give the one big thing that has come out of this. Because of Amanda's experience, I've changed one of my requirements on deals that I'm now involved in. In the title commitment, I am now asking for a 48-month chain of title to be reported in the commitment so that we can look for transfers in the last 4 years. Because this would have clearly red flagged it even further had that been asked for. The next thing I'm going to share with you is the large title insurance companies, the First Americans, the Old Republics, the Stewarts, all of those national big companies. They have their own backup networks and databases that some of these smaller companies don't have. And when you look, yeah, right there. Okay, thank you. I want to go back. See, this is 24 months. I'm now going back twice that because I'm looking for more stuff. And if I see something that's curious, and I've now had to do this on a couple of deals, I now go back to the title company. I go, I need to see this instrument. I need to see this document. I need to make sure that it makes sense. And remember, I'm usually representing. Tom, thank you for everything, brother. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm usually representing lenders now, and I want to make sure that my lender gets a valid first mortgage on a valid deed, because if there's not a valid deed giving the borrower title, there's not going to be a valid first mortgage. So that's one of the things I'm looking at is now I'm going back to 48 months and I want to see some more details. When I see a deed that is dated in 21 and not recorded until 25, I want to see immediately an affidavit of stale deed. I need to see an affidavit like Amanda talked about. Where's Barbara signing an affidavit explaining why that deed was held in a file drawer? Where's Leonard explaining why that deed was held in a file drawer? He's got to show up and now sign a new affidavit, which means I've got to now see that they're really truly going forward with this deal and explaining why it sat. So that's one of the other big takeaways. And I'm like Tom, I got to run. I've got another conference call and
Great information.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. So that is exactly what every reputable title company has stated when I send a file out, is that this would have been stopped right here, dead in its tracks, because they would have required affidavits from Barbara and Leonard. And all the title companies have stated, even if underwriting doesn't require it, even if underwriting didn't come back with, hey, we need affidavits from Barbara and Leonard, the title company themselves would have been like, no, even though underwriting didn't call it out or require it, title themselves would have said, no, we require it, for us to close this file. And then at that point, when they would have reached out to Barbara and Leonard, they would have figured out, Leonard's passed, and Barbara is 90. I'm not sure Barbara's mental capacity, like, is she still able to make, her son has POA on her right now. So she's probably not able to speak for herself, so to speak. So the son would have, alerted title that, hey, this isn't right. We don't know, Jimmy. We're not authorizing a sale.
In Florida, I thought that the attorneys would take a stale deed and reverse the entire transaction. That's what I understood from an attorney in Tampa.
This transaction has been reversed, but it was only because the sheriff's department went down there and to the county and did it. They took their information, and then they themselves went to the county on this property and this other one here that I was showing you guys. This house over here on Spring Hill Drive. They're actually, this little ring of fraudsters, they're living in this house right now. They produced a lease signed by this owner who has passed, with the stolen notary stamp. So they're on the radar. They're stacking charges against these guys. But this address and the address that I purchased, those deeds have been unwound and they're all back in the rightful owner's name. But the sheriff's department did it. Title did not do that. In my case.
I mean, that might be like a good case for why in Florida you don't have to have an attorney to have a title office at all. And for that reason, I would say it would probably be smart that if you're not going to close, if you're going to close anywhere, that there be an attorney owner, not just, someone that works there occasionally and moonlights in the office. You want to have
Mhm.
an attorney there, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, you do not have to close with an attorney in Florida. You just need title. So
And
that
not
may have
all of them.
prevented this, probably would have prevented this sale from moving forward.
I looked at some opportunities in Florida. I'm in North Carolina, which you do have to have an attorney on, and they handle the whole title process. But I've had multiple conversations with real estate attorneys in Florida, and the conclusion I drew is that a lot of the attorneys in Florida, maybe not, probably not all, but a lot of the attorneys in Florida aren't necessarily even looking at title itself. They're only concerned about making sure that the contract is written properly. And so you can't rely on an attorney unless you specifically ask them to review the title. But a lot of times they'll tell you, we don't do that. That's between you and the title company.
I will say the title companies that have requested to see this file locally, they're utilizing the deed, the underwriting documents, actually all of the documents that are involved here to train their staff for what to look for and what the red flags are, so that they can identify it as well. So not every title company has attorneys, so what they're doing is they're using these to just train their staff, their closers, and everybody in their office to say, hey, if this crosses our desk, here are the red flags that this deed itself has and why we would never close this, or the steps we would take, which is the affidavits from the sellers, Barbara and Leonard.
I wonder if you could lobby state real estate commission to put requirements that they follow and have some of these documents actually incorporated into real estate commission training documents for title, so that they have to check these things in the future.
So interesting you bring that up. I did speak to the county. I got a strong impression they really didn't care what I had to say. But I did bring it up to the county. I've left messages to the county clerk, emails and things, how we can perhaps change their requirements when one of these are recorded. If you look at Lee County does it vastly different than other counties in the state of Florida. One of the big ones in Lee County is they require photo identification of the signers, right? So in this case, Barbara and Leonard would have had to provide photo identification for this deed to be filed. And we know that they would not have been able to do that for multiple reasons. They're out of the country. One is passed. So it would have been stopped at the county from even being filed because they would not have been able to produce their photo identification. Yeah, so Lee County has already taken a lot of measures to prevent these kind of fraudulent quitclaim deeds. I did bring this up to our county, and like I said, they're like, okay, thanks for the call.
Have you gone to state level real estate commission board yet?
I have not.
That's probably where I would go. That's probably where you'll have the most effect. A lot of there may be state regulation that limits what counties can do and can't do from changes. But I mean, if you're only going county level, you're only impacting change at that county level. If you go state level, you may impact change for the entire state.
I would love to do that. If anybody has I'll call. I have no problem or send emails, but if you have a contact, that'd be great.
I don't. I'm not in Florida, but I know that like with a lot of different licensure in North Carolina, where you exact changes going directly to the real estate boards or the state licensing boards.
Mm-hmm.
And usually if you've got a lot of documentation, they're the ones that oversee the complaints against companies that have to get state certification in those spaces. And they're the ones that's where it's those complaints that influence a lot of the changes that ultimately end up being incorporated legislatively and rule changes at the board level. And they have a lot of power and a lot of sway.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Amanda, this is Frank.
Hey, Bryan.
Hi. Usually what I will do is when I'm working with a title company I don't know, I always get sort of a background on the abstractors, because some of these title companies use part-time abstractors. They're not as seasoned, so they miss stuff. The title companies that I work with, or the main title company that I work with, I know who the abstractors are. I've talked to them, and they're very thorough. So I think down the line, it's missed. A lot of the title closers will take whatever the abstractors give them, and basically they say, well, this guy has the experience, he's told me what he's found, and we'll go with it. And then that goes to the title insurance company. So yeah, it's kind of like real estate agents or real estate deals. Now they have to have appraisers off a list, and the appraisers could be from, like you said, Lee County appraising a property in Hillsborough County. Mm-hmm. Totally out of the area. So those are some things that's something that maybe you start asking your title company who the abstractors who's working with you on these. That makes sense.
How are you vetting them though? Like, what are you doing?
Well, you get to, you talk to the title agents, people who own the title companies. They know who these abstractors are. They know them by name. They probably used them before. If they say, well, they've only been with the company for 1 year, 6 months, mm-hmm. whatever, it makes a difference. You say, okay, well, I can hire an outside abstractor to do it, and it's like they said earlier, get your own report first, and see if it matches up with what the title abstractor is come up with, and you can abstract your own, and then see if they match.
Okay.
Not saying that would have relieved, found, but these are glaring. These red flags are glaring. They should have been picked up.
Oh, I agree. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why title and underwriting are, nobody seemed to want to take responsibility for, dropping the ball.
Well, I think it's like what was said before. The wholesaler, his credibility is shot. If it were me, I would have walked away. Whatever I need to do to make it right,
mm-hmm.
But he is not me.
Yeah, I notified on Sunday afternoon. After I was done with the sheriff's department, I called everyone involved in the deal. everybody, private money lenders, wholesalers, everybody, stop, red flags. We got a problem. Don't
Mhm.
spend that money.
Mhm.
Whatever you do, don't spend the money. Because I'm pretty sure, when the sheriff's department is telling you they're on the phone with the family's alive, we're supposed to be dead, then yeah,
Yeah.
we're
And
we have a big problem.
from what I understand, the wholesaler yanked his money as soon as it arrived into his account or into the account. He moved it
Yeah.
to another account, correct?
I'm pretty sure that they were not able to retrieve it. So I'm not exactly sure how, it was a wire, they couldn't retrieve it. So that's what I'm guessing, reading between the lines here. But I know the wholesaler personally. I'm not gonna bash him
Mhm.
or anything publicly. I do know that he and his family needed that money to, make it. So pay
Yeah.
rent and things like that. So I feel bound for the guy. I do, a lot of times they're not making much money, so they needed it, for his family expenses and things. So I can't fault him, for needing to pay his bills
Yeah.
and paying his bills. So, like, I get it. We were all victims here, and so was he. And it's just unfortunate. It's been a big, fat, unfortunate event.
Mhm. Well, it's a seminar.
It's $190,000 seminar. Yes.
It's a seminar.
Yeah. Yeah, that I hope we can all learn from. I mean, I hope you guys can take the red flags that I've mentioned, and implement that in your day-to-day real estate underwriting.
Well, thanks for bringing it to us. It definitely opens our eyes.
Are there any more questions? Let's see. Wait a minute. I can't see the chat if there's any more questions. Let's see, there we go.
Sorry, I've had something else going on here, Amanda. I'm not very present with you.
No, that's okay. I'm looking at the chat to see if there's any other questions that I missed.
Okay, that's
So you're still interested in the property?
I am still interested. I'm trying to save the deal actively. The family doesn't seem very interested in selling. I've door knocked the one family member here in town that I could find. It's an extended family member. She has spoken to the folks in Bermuda, the son, and they really don't seem very interested in selling the house. The house does have a hole in the roof, a literal hole, where when it rains inside the house as well. I offered to tarp the roof, for the family, because they're out of town. They declined. I offered to tarp the roof and put air movers in there because the air conditioning shot doesn't work. And so now we have rain coming in a very hot environment with no air movement. So they're going to start growing mold. In fact, one of that walls already has mold on it. So, I am trying to, save it, buy it from the rightful owner, but they don't seem to be very interested. They have not reached out to me. I've left messages via the detectives and the one family member. I've left notes in the house too in case they do come back.
Well, I
of me.
think they still see you as part of a fraudulent deal. So
Yeah.
they probably don't want any communication with you. I mean, like I suggested before, take a vacation to Bermuda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like I can go to Bermuda and have a tax write-off. Do a little door knocking, so that would be cool. But I can't get any of the family to really correspond. If I do end up finding their contact information in Bermuda, which I've been unsuccessful in doing. I'll likely have somebody else call them, not myself, you know, because I feel like they have a bad taste in their mouth with me,
Yeah.
unfortunately, even though I've made
Yeah.
it very clear. And I, via the detectives, or I told her, I said, please, please, please be sure that they know I am not involved and I'm a victim as well. And they have told them, you know, that, and they're just still not responding at all.
Now, you put your lock on it.
I did put my lock and I'm not taking it off.
Okay. So you have access.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would go in, take pictures of the damage, take pictures of the mold on the wall, somehow get those pictures to whoever can get them to Barbara and let her know you know, that it's a situation that needs to be fixed right away. And get an option on the property. If you have to put 5 or 10 grand into it to get it right, get an option to buy it whenever they're ready to sell it.
Yeah, that is the strategy I'd like to move forward with. And at the very least, just getting that roof tarp. We are in rainy season here in Florida. The one family member that I can correspond with recently said that she advocated and said, hey, listen, you know, sell the house. You're not coming back to the States. And she expressed that the price, you know, that I could pay for it was a fair price. And they got very offended with that and have stopped talking to her. So the next thing I'm going to do is mail a letter to them directly in Bermuda. But the house has been vacant, gosh, well over 5 years. Barbara has not been back to the States in many, many years. So I'm not sure what hold, you know, they have on this house. The son, I don't think he's coming back either, you know, so she does have 2 boys. One was murdered and the other one is alive and living in Bermuda. So, you know, it's all up to him to sell the house. He has POA. So it's a very, very unusual situation, both from the seller's side and the fraud side. Everything has been very, very, very unusual.
With her being 90 plus probably by now.
Yeah, she's 90.
Her son has the POA. If she dies, the POA dies. Now it's going through probate. Now it's going through probate in another country. So
you still have to do probate in Florida. And another unusual thing here is she has not paid taxes since 2020 or 2019. Barbara herself had not paid. Various family members have been going and paying these taxes. And in the past 2 years, nobody paid the taxes because the family has just kind of washed their hands of it. They don't want anything to do with it. The ones that live here. Is what the one lady told me. They're just not paying taxes on it anymore. So there was 2 years of back taxes that were paid when I closed out the deal. So I'm not sure. I'll have to find out if those taxes were retrieved from the county. And if they were, this will go to a tax deed sale because nobody's paying those taxes.
yeah, it'll be a year at least.
Yeah, right. We have another year of that, but that is also very unusual that they don't want to sell the house, but they're not paying the taxes. I can't explain it.
I don't know. You know, I think people, especially elderly people, they see their house as part of their wealth. And if they lose the house, they lose their wealth. But their wealth would be the cash invested in an appreciating asset instead of a depreciating asset. Because the longer this thing sits with a hole in it, it's going to be garbage in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Now I do have their address down where they live in Bermuda. It's gorgeous. I mean, I can't imagine what they've paid for this house down there. So I'm not sure if they're just, you know, extremely wealthy and they just don't care. I don't know. I can't make any kind of sense of how they have responded to this. Another interesting fact is they have not pressed formal charges with the sheriff's department. So if they do not press formal charges against Jimmy in this ring, the charges will be dropped. There'll be no case. Because I'm no longer a victim, I'm now just a witness, because we will get refunded when, I don't know, but because we are going to get refunded, everything was unwound. I'm just now considered a witness, and so is my private money lender. He's just now a witness. No, we're not victims anymore. So the only victim in this case is Barbara. And unless Barbara via her son press formal charges, then the whole thing will be dropped, and these guys will be able to go rinse and repeat, to other houses in the community. It's very unfortunate.
That's how they get away with it.
In both cases, in both deeds, owners were passed. Owners were elderly, senior citizens, and in one case, it was out of country owner. So all that is.
And the house is free and clear.
The house I bought was free and clear. Now the house that the other house is not. Interesting.
I still go back to take a trip. I mean, that's, well, I mean, you might laugh, but they need to see a face. If somebody shows up at their doorstep and says, look, they may not be getting the information from family members. Barbara she may have dementia.
Yeah, true enough.
They may say she doesn't know, she wouldn't understand what we're telling her. So it kind of falls back on the son with the POA to get something done. I think he's your contact. He's the one that you need to bug. Because he has all rights.
I wish I could find somebody that can skip trace them and get the actual phone number. Nobody, the sheriff's department has it. Of course, they're not going to give it to me. But I've spent some time trying to get, contact information to these guys.
Hey, Amanda.
Yeah.
Have you considered a PI?
Actually, I spoke to one last week. So I spoke to one last week. It was a friend of a friend's. We did a conference call. She was able to provide some more information in regards to different family members, but her capabilities didn't reach Bermuda. So she wasn't able to provide any kind of direct contact information, unfortunately. And she did it free of charge. So I mean, it wasn't like maybe she could have dug a little more. I'm not sure, but she was saying outside of the country is pretty difficult to get contact information. So I think, if I was going to go hire somebody, I'd probably just pay the $800 plane ticket and go myself.
I don't blame you. It sounds like a wonderful vacation, especially after everything you've gone through this. And thank you for sharing. It's definitely been very informative.
Yeah, thank you. She lives on like oh gosh, it's so beautiful. She's got beach on one side and beach on the other side, and you can walk either way and be, in this beautiful cove with turquoise water. I mean, it's a dream, where she lives, or her last known address in Bermuda anyway. I mean, it's gorgeous. I've already
I think this is going to take at least a month in Bermuda to figure this out.
A month in Bermuda. I've got no problem with it. You want to go, Frank?
I think you need
it's
to
like
start
I said
like
before,
the whole
Wade has guns.
whole YouTube, your whole YouTube section on just this alone, and then go to Bermuda, take it with you, let us all come.
That's an idea.
Yeah, I'm gonna call I'll call my accountant and CPA and ask him if this is if I could write all this off on my taxes.
Only if you get the deal.
Oh gosh. Only if I get the deal?
No, I would think real estate, if you're in real estate, you can buy real estate anywhere. And if you're looking for real estate, you're looking for sellers anywhere. So
yeah,
you
we
can
do it
write
on
anything
cruises
off
all the
in
time.
travel.
Do it on a cruise. You know, I don't know how, I
Mhm.
went to France.
Real
I went to
estate,
Paris and we looked at a couple buildings.
Interesting.
yeah. From what I was told, real estate, people that work in real estate, we don't take vacations. We always go on business.
I'll ask him today. I'll send him a little text message. He'll enjoy that one. To see if I can write off a trip to Bermuda. I've went down this rabbit hole. It's less than $800 plane ticket, 45-minute Uber drive to her house from the airport, beach all the way. There's all-inclusive resorts that you can stay right by her house. It would be amazing.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's at least a week it's going to take. But you know, instead of beating your head against the wall, I think just go to the source. Just go to the well. That's what you're going to
Yeah.
have to do. It may be worth it. Then again, you may be kicking sand, but still, you'll be kicking sand on a beach in Bermuda.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more I speak about the deal and the more folks like Frank encourage me to go, I think there is probably a trip in the future. It would be a really cool
Yeah, I mean, I would
ending to
definitely
the
look.
story.
Once you're there, you can probably hire somebody, you know, go to Hamilton, the big city there. There are a lot of law firms, a lot of, you know, real estate firms, people who can use the resources there to find the people you need to find. And they can tell you where to go, how to get there. I mean, they're great bus lines there that'll take you anywhere on the island. So
So you've been there, Frank?
a few times.
Well, we'll talk to Wade. He'll probably let you come. Wade can't come
Yeah,
with me,
yeah.
so I have to have somebody.
Well, if you can't go, let me know and I'll go. I'll be your PI over there. I may
We
mess
could get a
things
whole
up though.
group. We'll get a whole group and we'll do, it'll be like an education
There you
slash
go.
door knocking
Well,
slash.
you know, they
Okay,
have
now you're talking.
cruises. They have cruises out of New Jersey, and usually they're 5 to 7 days. So it takes a day to get over. You spend like 5 days on the island, living on the ship, and then another day and a half to get back. So I think that would be the way to go. It would take care of the hotel and the food and the travel,
Interesting.
and you live on the ship. And during the day, you can do whatever you want.
Interesting. Well, like
Come
we
and
gotta
go.
talk later, Frank.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, lady, I need to go.
Yep.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. I'm so sorry that this has happened. But then again, you're making lemons out of lemonade, or lemonade out of lemons.
I'm
And
trying,
it's
so I
helping a lot of
appreciate
people.
everybody.
And it's helping a lot of people. So we really appreciate it. So,
All right. Thanks,
well, you
guys.
guys,
Any more questions before I hop off?
You never know what'll come out of it, do you?
No.
that's true. Well,
I
listen,
was
everybody
looking.
have a nice
All
Father's
right.
Day. And Amanda, have a good weekend. We'll talk.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to talk about, but it's been a good discussion and wow, unbelievable. So you still got funds tied up in this thing, right, Amanda?
Right. Well, not my personal funds, my private money lender funds.
I know, but you got money, you got an obligation to it. So.
Right. Right. And I feel terrible. You know, the opportunity cost is great when you've got funds like that tied up.
Yep, I agree.
And that's the problem. So at this point in time, he's not going to charge me the points and interest, although that might change as time creeps on. But to kind of smooth over this debacle and having his funds tied up, I brought him in on another deal that I really didn't have to, but I did. So I split that deal with him, and he came out with a nice chunk of change out of a deal that I did a wholesale on. So I kind of try to smooth everything over with that. Because I don't want to burn that bridge. I don't want to lose a private money lender. That would be awful. I've already lost the deal, so I don't want to lose the lender too. Did I lose you guys? Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, we all have these challenges that to weigh out the pros and the cons. We're going to have them.
Yeah.
So the title company now is going to cover this. Is that correct?
So the gap in funds, I'm not 100% sure if that's coming from underwriting's E&O or title E&O. But somebody's insurance is paying that out.
Okay. But you know how long it'll take to settle that?
It's been 6 weeks. From what I'm being told, title did receive the gap funding check and they're waiting for that to clear the bank, and then they're going to refund the lender. The lender had received some of the monies back because we kept pestering them, like, listen, you know, if you've got part of the funds, just send part of the funds at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the funds were funded last week, and the gap is kind of what we're waiting on now, for that check to clear title, and then title to wire those funds over.
Okay.
But it's been a mess. It's just been, it's been nothing short of a nightmare. The first 3 days I had chest pain for like 3 days straight, literally. Just an unbelievable amount of stress, especially because of the way underwriting and title handled the situation, made it exponentially worse. I kind of felt like I kind of felt like they were, I don't know, not on my side, so to speak, or not taking enough action, being very lax about it, you know, prove that it was fraud. And I'm like, it wasn't that I was saying that it was fraud. It was the sheriff's department already the sheriff's department already said that. So the sheriff's department already opened a case, and it was, you know, that ball was already rolling. It wasn't that, hey, I think it's fraud. Hey, the sheriff's department have, you know, spoken to the owners, and, you know, we have to stop these funds. And the fact that they didn't stop the funds, it was just very intense those first 3 days, to say the least.
Sorry, I'm multitasking this morning. I've got a problem. We had a storm last night. A problem with the internet at one of our schools, and trying to help with that. Our vocational school, our church, and I got a three-way call going with the AT&T. Been going on for an hour and 20 minutes trying to get it working. So the IT department and one of the instructors of the class. So, all right. Well, anybody else got any questions? If not, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for everything, Amanda, and hope it all work out.
Thank you.
Better for everybody, for you in the long run, and we'll all learn from your mistakes. So.
Yes, I hope so. Thank you, guys.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Bye now.